and welcome back. I'm B. Today I'm talking about Final Destination Bloodlines, the newest installment in the Final Destination franchise. This video will include spoilers, so if you haven't seen the movie yet, this is your warning. Let's get into it. I really enjoyed this movie. I loved the opening sequence centering around Iris and her fiance Paul. They were likable and endearing, which made the setup more engaging than usual. The two of them are at the Skyview Tower restaurant, this brand new, built ahead of schedule spot that's the hot place in town. Everyone's there. It felt like a believable setting, not just a random disaster waiting to happen. They did a great job building up the tension in the sequence. Iris is clearly uneasy the whole time, and we learn it's because she's afraid of heights, which just adds to the anxiety. There's a lot happening here, but it works. And that damn penny, who would have thought a penny would be the catalyst for so much destruction? And there they go. They show a little boy dying on screen, and this is the little boy that had the penny, and he's told to leave the penny alone in the beginning, but of course he doesn't listen. Now, normally I'm not a fan of showing children's deaths on screen, but in this case I wasn't mad at it. Maybe because it didn't actually happen, because Iris saves everyone with her premonition, but it was still a bold choice to show it. I also appreciated the twist that they put on the premonition formula. Stephanie, who is the granddaughter of Iris, doesn't actually have visions of her own. Instead, she dreams about Iris's premonitions. And that's a big departure from the usual setup in this franchise where the main character is the one having the visions. I thought it was an interesting way to keep the core concept, but still shake things up a bit. I like the Bloodlines angle, which was also a different take from the other Final Destination movies. Death is coming back for the generations that are the descendants of the original survivors. And that twist gave the movie a fresh hook. I like that we focused more on Iris's family and got to see some of their dynamics. It gave the characters more depth and made it easier to care about them. We found out that Stephanie and Charlie's mom, Darlene, left years ago because of the trauma from dealing with Iris's obsession with death. There's this tension between Stephanie, Charlie, and the cousins since Stephanie distanced herself after going to college. And Stephanie is able to eventually find Iris holed up in a death trap of a cabin, trying to piece together more about her premonitions. I liked seeing older Iris. She had this I see you death energy that gave her character some edge. I think it was kind of silly that the only way to convince Stephanie was to step outside the safety of her cabin so Stephanie could watch her die. Like, okay, seeing is believing, but I just thought that was a bit silly. Anyway, Iris dies, which sets everything in motion for her family. Death starts coming for the rest of the family, beginning with Uncle Howard. The build-up and the fake-outs during the backyard barbecue scene were great. I didn't watch the trailer, so I had no idea what to expect with that. And then, he steps on a glass in the grass, falls over, and his head gets lawn mowed, and that was a gross scene. So I really like the buildup of that, and you're trying to figure out, like, okay, the glass is in the ice and then it's in the cup, and who's going to drink the glass, but that's not actually what happened. So I love that. So now we think Eric is next in line because he's the oldest son. We get a fake out death at the tattoo parlor that looks real, and I was like, okay, he's gone, but then nope, he's alive. Julie is the next oldest, and so she dies instead. And her death, getting crushed in a garbage truck, it was over the top. The way that she fell into the garbage, she got hit by the soccer ball, fell into the garbage, went into the garbage truck. It was very over the top, but that is what this franchise is known for. So at that point, I was thinking, wait, why did Death skip Eric? Then we find out the twist. He is not Uncle Howard's biological son. I thought that was a very good reveal, and his reaction in that scene was hilarious. It was shock in the middle of this chaos, and he said some really funny lines like, oh, that's why he wanted to play catch with me. So I thought that was a really good scene. Now we know Eric's is not next, and so it shifts to Bobby. And meanwhile, Stephanie sees the initials JB in Iris's book, who is still alive. And I was like, who's JB? I knew it couldn't be Bloodworth because his name is William, but apparently his middle name is John. So there's that little plot twist there to kind of throw us off a little bit. So we meet up with Bloodworth. And yes, Tony Todd is back, and we finally get the answers that fans have been waiting for about him and his backstory. So it turns out that he was the little boy that Iris saved at the Sky Tower. That's why he knows all the rules and all the patterns about death. And so once Iris's family dies, so does he. I thought that was a great tie-in for his character. It made sense and gave him some closure. It was also bittersweet because you can tell Tony Todd was sick, and knowing that this was his last movie that he filmed made this scene really hit differently. He got to say his own final lines to the fans, and that was a really touching moment. So before Bloodworth leaves, he also reminds them of the old rules: cheat death by dying and being revived, or by taking someone else's life. Eric and Bobby are formulating a plan for Bobby to cheat death, and they see the babies and are considering just for a brief moment to maybe sacrifice one of the babies, but of course they don't, right? But it's a funny moment having them kind of be like, should we though? And so they decide to induce an allergic reaction in Bobby, who's allergic to peanuts. But of course, everything goes wrong. And while they are in the MRI room waiting for Bobby to react, the MRI machine suddenly turns on. Eric, who has a bunch of piercings, gets yanked into the machine while Bobby's having his allergic reaction on the floor. And I have to say that Eric's death was the most memorable death of the movie. It was unexpected because we thought that he wasn't going to die because he's not, a part of the actual bloodline. But, it was horrifying to see that. And so you're not supposed to fuck with death. And Eric kept fucking with death. And death got tired of Eric and was like, time to go. Poor Eric, they did him so wrong in this movie with that first death fake out and then this real death. And then Bobby dies too, and it's not from the allergy, but from the spring launching out of the vending machine and hitting him and drilling him in the forehead. And it was ridiculous, but also very Final Destination. So now we're down to Darlene, Stephanie, and Charlie. They think that Iris's cabin will keep them safe. Everything starts moving really fast at this point. Darlene dies, and honestly, her death was kind of, it was kind of blah to me. And then Stephanie gets trapped in the RV. Well, she's trapped in the RV before, and she starts to drown because she can't unbuckle herself, and Charlie manages to unbuckle her and save her and revive her. Or so he thinks. And of course, we know it's not over. It's prom day for Charlie. He and Stephanie think everything is all good. But one of the neighbors, who happens to be a doctor, tells them that Stephanie didn't actually die. And that's when they realize that death will still be after them. So, and then the penny makes its return. Early in the movie, it fell out of Iris's book at the hospital and was picked up by an old lady that was at the hospital. And it ends up falling out of her coin purse and lands on a train track. That penny ends up derailing a whole train, and logs from one of the trains flies off and kills Stephanie first and then Charlie. So honestly, to me, the ending was corny. I get what they were trying to do with the logs, but we already saw the log truck early in the movie. That was enough, right? They wanted to play into our fear, the logs, because of Final Destination 2, but I just thought that it was corny the way they did that. The train being derailed by a penny was silly even for the franchise, and honestly, it ended kind of boring to me. Now, some of the deaths were memorable, some were just okay. As I mentioned before, Eric's MRI death was the best to me. The CGI wasn't the best, especially in certain moments, but to be fair, the franchise has never really been known for amazing effects. Final Destination 4 and 5 had some rough ones too. It would have been nice to see a little bit more practical effects for some of the deaths, but there were also a few callbacks in this movie to the other movies in the franchise, and so these are some of the ones that I caught on to. So you have the RV almost hitting the log truck. It's a callback to the infamous log truck scene in Final Destination 2. You have Stephanie almost drowning in the RV, reminding me of Kimberly in Final Destination 2, drowning in the ambulance and then being revived at the hospital. Eric almost getting hit by the bus, a nod to Terry in the first Final Destination actually getting hit by a bus. Darlene getting crushed by a pole or some sort of sign or something, similar to McKinley getting crushed by the sign in Final Destination 3 when they were at the fair. The train derailment with Charlie and Stephanie also gave me Final Destination 3 vibes with Wendy, Julie, and Kevin. So I'm sure there were, more nods to the earlier movies that I might have missed. Let me know in the comments if you caught any others. So Final Destination Bloodlines isn't perfect by far, but it was still an enjoyable watch. I like that they switched some things up, and I think it worked for the most part. Now, they don't need to make any more Final Destination movies, but if they do make one, and they probably will, I will watch. Normally, I rate my movies out of Scream Queens, and I'm giving Final Destination Bloodlines 3.5 out of 5 Scream Queens. All right, folks, those are my thoughts. How did you feel about this addition to the franchise? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more horror, sci-fi, and thriller content.